I've always got a special thrill from filming badgers. Now, in this wood behind me, there's a marvellous set, and it's one I've been working on now for about a month. I've been running power from this house to some lights, and the animals are just about getting used to it now. The cubs have been joining the adults above ground for about 3 or 4 weeks and can already be mistaken for them. You can see from this one following its mother that they're still a bit smaller and have puffy little tails. I increased the level of light very slowly over a long period, encouraging the badgers to stay in the glare by throwing them a few handfuls of peanuts every night. They came to recognize my scent and eventually accepted both me and my lights, now bright enough to film by. Whilst the mother goes off to look for food or bedding, the cubs usually have games of rough and tumble. Their mother returns with some fresh leaves to use as bedding. Watching the badgers behaving so naturally makes all the time spent in preparation well worthwhile.
Brereton earns her living as a wildlife painter specialising in British animals. But she has a confession to make. Despite frequent attempts to see badgers in the wild, she's never managed to do so. She left her home in Crouch, Derbyshire, to spend a night with Simon, who hoped to make her dream of a live badger watch come true.
You're managing? Just about. Sorry, it's a steep hill, but that's of course why it's good for the badgers.
Yeah.
There aren't many people come charging up here to see them.
No, I can imagine.
Get on, give me some help. Go on, pick up those knees. That's a sure sign a badger's been around. You see the guard hairs caught in the barbed wire, and you can see it's a badger. You look at each hair. It's pale at the base, dark, and then a very pale tip, and that's what makes them look grey.
Yes.
They're not actually grey hairs, but that sort of contrast makes them look grey. You can see here, this is a dung pit area. It's another good sign of activity. This is where, well, you can see what the badgers do.
Yes.
And they communally use these areas. They're little toilets, really.
How do you know it's badger?
Have a sniff. No, it's much looser than a dog, and it's in a pit, and it hasn't been covered. Cats cover their droppings. So badgers are the only things I know that do it in a pit and leave it open for all to smell. And they act also as a mark for the boundary of the territory, as well as a toilet.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, I can see the one that you've got your foot in is full of peanuts. So they've been eating the food I put down for them. Anyway, let's go and see if we can find the set.
Right.
Try not to walk on the path too much. I know that sounds silly, but this is the badger path. This is where they come through.
Yeah.
And if they smell strange feet, they might be a bit upset.
What a fantastic area.
It's a marvellous set. It
Excavations everywhere.
Huge. I've not counted the holes, but there's got to be 10, 15 different entrances.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that they're all interlinked, because I've seen animals going in at the top, which is the most used area, and the same animal coming out at the bottom.
Oh.
So down there somewhere there's a whole network of tunnels and chambers. I'd take you over there, but I'm quite keen that we don't walk over the top, because we want to watch tonight. And
they pick up the scent.
that's right. If we walk across, they'll smell that there's somebody strange. I don't mean that personally, but they'll smell a strange scent.
No, and the noise, I suppose, and
That's
walking about on top of them.
If the wind direction's right, and it is at the moment, we should be able to use the hide. That's the, it's not really a hide, little fence.
We're going to be as close as that.
Oh, yeah, right on top of them. And there's a fallen tree behind it. That'll mask our outline. And can you see I've got cable strung through the trees right around the set. I've got them off ground layer so that the badgers don't walk into them and obviously smell that I've been around and get disturbed. And they're the power source for the lights. I've got one in the tree over by the ivy tree, second and a third, all trained onto the area where I feed the badgers. I was just thinking, it's a bit disheartening. I know you're probably going to go back and watch badgers at home.
Yes,
And
hopefully. Pick up a few tips.
I was thinking that you're looking at these lights and you think, well, how am I going to set something like this up? But they will accept a torchlight.
Will they?
Oh, yes. If you, some people use a red filter on the torch, and I've never done that. I think what the red filter does ostensibly is that it dims the torch, and if you use a low power bulb or one which the batteries are failing in, and you bring it in slowly from behind the animal, don't smack it straight into its eyes, but see where the animal is in the half light, switch the torch on and draw the light preferably across from its bottom to its head rather than... And they will stand in the light surprisingly happily. Oh, by the way, what have you brought to wear?
Well, I just come as I am. I've got a wax coat.
They're okay. I'm not too... They're a bit noisy. If you move your arms at all, then the wax linen, when you rub the sleeve against the body, it makes a sort of rust. I've got a duffel coat at home that I can lend you. Is that all right?
Oh,
you don't mind wearing a duffel
no,
coat?
no, don't want to frighten them
It's
off.
plenty warm enough, and they're very quiet, because I wear some sort of funny overall. So don't be scared when you see me coming at you in a camouflaged overall.
Oh, right.
But I do think we ought to be making tracks now.
Yeah.
I want to be set up about an hour before dusk. So if you're set,
Right.
make our way back down the slope.
Okay.
Irene and I were settled in position by 7 o'clock that evening. Then came the waiting. She had to remain virtually motionless and silent to have any chance of seeing a badger. I was afraid that we were going to have to leave without seeing them. Perhaps they could smell a stranger was with me, even though the wind was in our faces. Then, at 10 o'clock, I heard a peanut being eaten from somewhere just inside one of the holes. It was one of the adults, but it seemed very nervous and on edge. I'm sure he could smell strangers, and he wasn't going to stick around to meet them. I thought that might be all we'd see, but even if it was, I could tell from the look on Irene's face it wouldn't matter. But we were lucky. We had some smashing views of both the cubs and several adults before we crept away at about midnight.
That's fantastic. I'm absolutely thrilled to have had the opportunity to do it. And to have actually seen them now, you know, after all these chances that I've wanted to have to see them. I thought I'll go back to Derbyshire now and try and do some watching on my own. But the main thing is I can now do a painting of badgers. And it's just the sort of spirit of the animal to be able to see it acting naturally, not just crossing a road, actually in its set, behaving perfectly naturally. It's marvellous.
Ian Castle has lived in London all his 30 years. He works in advertising, enjoys photography and badminton, colours Victorian engravings, loves wildlife films, and in what's left of his spare time, is also a captain in the Austrian Army of 1809. His letter said he'd be willing to sacrifice his warm flat, comfy chair, television, food and drink, all for the chance to spend time behind rain-drenched bushes or crawling through mud.
Mud, to me, immediately suggests wading birds. Of those, the curlew is perhaps one of the most elegant. Now, they're not the hardest birds to film, but getting to and from the hide can be a bit of a problem. We had to travel across about 3 miles of open water to get to the island where I'd put the hide. For reasons that you'll understand later, we had to travel light, so no heavy outboard motor, just paddle power. Normally we'd be wearing life jackets, but I was sitting on a buoyancy aid and the camera boat was alongside us, so there was no problem.
Draw it in, pull it in. There we go. Right, you stay seated. Oh, the curlew have been up here. Might put fingers in the legs and with pinch.
It's always as easy as this.
You wait till we go back, mate. That's the good bit.
Right, I've got to get out now, have I?
Yeah.
I can't stay down here.
Hang on. That's it, well done. Oh, well done. Right, just get the hide in its final position and we'll be in business. I think we've got about 20 minutes before the birds start feeding.
Great. How long have you been stuck in one of these before now?
Oh, don't ask. The longest I've ever spent in a hide's 20 hours.
20 hours? Great.
You get a bit of cramp after that.
I'm sure you do. So where will the birds be at this moment in time while they're waiting for the tide to go down?
What, the curlew?
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping that the majority are on the island behind us. At high tide, they just preen and sleep up on the high ground. And then as the tide drops away in front of us, so they should come down to feed on the mud.
Right.
Can you see there's a mud spit exposed way out in the middle now?
Yes.
Not all curlew, but some of them are territorial feeders. In other words, they'll defend a patch of mud.
Right.
And I'm hoping that we've got one whose patch of mud is just in front of us.
Right. Well, should get some good close-ups there.
Hear that call?
Yes, I can hear it in the distance, yeah. It's very distinct, isn't it? It stands out above all the others.
Yeah. I think it's one of my favourite calls in the world, curlew and buzzard.
I don't think I've ever heard of buzzard.
No?
I don't get a lot of those in London.
That's true. That's not bad. It's a male, I think. See how short the bill is?
Mm-hmm.
Cleaning his feet.
Yes. It's a waste of time out there, I should think.
Yeah, why bother? It's his bill, actually. He's washing his bill. And that's so that he can preen his feathers without mucking them up. That's nice. Scratch and dry.
You must be reasonably relaxed.
He's going to come up. Oh, great.
Oh, he's walking in the right direction now,
Yeah,
isn't he?
lovely job.
Completely.
Oh, on there. Brilliant.
How, on your lens, how much of that lens is he filling at the moment?
All of it.
Oh, wonderful.
It's full frame shot.
Oh, he's doing the business, isn't he?
Getting better. Careful with the movements. It's
Yeah, I've only got a tiny little opening here.
Oh, he's going.
It's going to come right across the front of me.
So close.
Looking straight towards me.
I'll be proud. Oh, look at that. Yeah.
Oh, I can see he's got a wet head. I can see all the feathers.
He's roosting right beside us.
Oh, that could be encouraging, couldn't it, for the others?
Careful.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. Right underneath us. Absolutely lovely. Looks like we're in for a bit of a shower.
That's all we need at the moment.
Shouldn't trouble us too much.
As the wind blows, it sprays in here.
Like fools, we'd left our sandwiches on the boat and didn't want to get out of the hide and disturb the birds. It was all right for the curlews. Their lunch was in the mud.
Oh, got a good bit of work then.
That's a flatfoot one.
Yeah, I think I only got half of it. That's the other half.
Oh, dear.
Another little bit of it. Getting the last bit. Yeah.
So, can you hear the worms moving around underneath?
I don't think so. No, I think they go visually and by the touch. And of course they can see the worm casts the same as we can. And we probe down into the burrows. He's having a good preen down there now.
Oh, yes, I see, yeah.
Oh look, he's using the oil gland at the top of the tail.
Oh, right, you
see,
can have a really clear view of it, yeah. That's excellent.
Smearing it all over the feathers. Under the wings. Oh look, gets his head right in. Lovely.
And this is presumably to keep it dry when it's in the water.
That's right.
So is it something that all seabirds would do?
No, funnily enough, cormorants haven't got an oil gland. That's why you see them drying out with their wings.
Oh, right, it's on the rocks by the coast, yes.
Yeah, they can't afford to stay in the water for too long, even though they eat fish.
Rather unfortunate, really, isn't it?
Very primitive bird. That's super. Look at that, rubbing it right underneath his belly.
Oh, that's really clear, isn't it?
We'd been in the hide for nearly 5 hours, and it was time to leave.
Now for the tough bit. We've got to get back across all that.
We're going back across all that mud.
Indeed we are.
It would take another 6 or 7 hours for the tide to come back up, and by that time it would have been dark.
Right. Put your weight on the boat.
All the way to where the limits.
Good stuff, eh?
God, it's a legs, isn't it?
Keeps you fit. See if you want to rest. Can't talk. If you want to rest.
Wendy Richard, best known these days as Pauline Fowler in EastEnders. But for 12 years before that, we laughed with her as Miss Brahms in Are You Being Served? And back in the 60s, she was the whining teenage cockney asking, "What for?" on Mike Sand's hit, Come Outside. One of Wendy's hobbies is collecting model frogs. So when Simon invited her to come outside and see the real thing in action, she leapt at the chance.
You ever seen a frog?
The only time to be sure of seeing a lot of frogs is when they're breeding, but just when that happens differs from year to year. I had to let Wendy know things had started with a last-minute phone call.
You didn't mind me phoning you up quite so late last night?
No, of course not. So I said it would be okay, because I was really keen on coming down.
Well, as I told you, I did hear quite a lot of frogs. It was mainly males. I didn't see many females. But they were croaking.
Yeah.
Not much spawn. So, but I did...
Well, I left it early, so I don't know if there's any spawn there now. We'll go down and have a look.
But you might be lucky today.
Hope so. Hope so. The temperature's right. Did I tell you there are adders here?
You're kidding.
I am big.
I
Yeah,
hope
they are
so.
here. You find them here, but it's a bit cold.
Well, I don't want to find any. The only adder I'm used to is my calculator. Down here?
Yeah. Steady on, 'cause it's still quite rough there.
Right.
Hope it stays warm for this evening, because frogs aren't going to like it if it chills off.
No, I won't be too keen either.
There it is.
Oh, isn't it lovely?
I think so. I think it's a very, very beautiful pond, this one.
Oh, it is.
And it's perfect for the frogs. Nice still water with lots of shallows around the edges with all this weed and the reeds. Marvellous spot. It's a bit steep down here. We'll go on down.
Right.
Frogs only get together for a few nights each year, and since I'd called Wendy, I'd not heard a single croak.
Gets a bit wetter here.
Oh, yes. I might suddenly disappear from view, I
If you
think.
see me go, don't follow.
No, I won't follow you, don't worry. Ugh.
You're right.
Yeah.
I must confess that the silence as we approached the water was making me wonder if I picked the right day.
Hold these branches back so you don't scratch it. Nice.
Right,
Okay.
thanks, Simon.
Wait for me, because if it gets deep, I'd rather disappear with waders on than you with your wellies.
Yes, you can lend me some waders or something for later?
I've got some at home, some chest ones. You can use those.
Oh,
Let's
good.
just listen and see if there's any frogs.
Right.
No.
Oh,
I'll go and look and see if there's any spawn there anyway.
right.
Okay?
Yeah. You got some?
Hey, hey, hey.
Oh,
They've started. Look at that.
isn't that amazing?
That's just one clump.
Yeah.
That's just from one female. You ever held it? Have you ever held frog spawn?
Oh, no, but I'm going to, aren't I?
Well, if you want to. I'm not going to force it.
It looks like that pudding you used to get at boarding school. Was it
Tapioca.
tapioca or
Yes.
whatever it was?
I've never tasted it. So, ready?
Yes.
It's quite hard to hold.
Oh, dear.
Got it?
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing.
They make little toys like this, don't they?
Yeah.
Little buckets of this stuff.
There must be thousands in there.
About, well, I think well, certainly over 1,000. 1,003, 1,400.
Do you want to count them?
Up to you.
One,
Okay.
two.
Finding the spawn had renewed my faith. The frogs should be most active during the night, and the evening was just warm enough for some activity to occur.
Oh,
But all the frogs will have gone down by now, so don't worry too much
I'm not
about
going to be treading on any.
splashing. No, they're all over there by the spawn.
Oh, I see.
They were here when I came down to put the camera in.
Right.
Okay? Goes a bit deeper there. I've got
It is
you.
a bit deep. I'm not as tall as you. But I'm heavier. Oops.
Ah, you're not.
I am.
Okay? I've got
Yeah. Right.
you. Right there.
Yeah.
Can you see where the spawn is? Just out there.
Oh, yeah.
As I came in, they've got very good hearing, and they felt obviously the water splash, so boom,
They
down
won't
they
keep
go.
us waiting too long, will they?
Well, could be about an hour.
Oh, you're kidding.
Look, there's the first one coming up. Can you see right on the edge of the spawn?
Yeah.
That's a male.
So they come back to the same pond then every year? The same place?
The answer to that is probably. It's not a rule. I think it's fascinating. What decides whether a frog returns to the pond or not is the smell of an acid. I think it's glycolic acid that is given off by the algae in the pond. And they can smell this from quite a distance when they come out of hibernation. And then they come in, and if there's sufficient quantities, they'll lay their eggs in the pond, often in a traditional spot, and that's where the water is shallow
Oh, I
and
see.
likely to be warmest when the sun comes
Yeah.
up, so the eggs hatch.
A lot of these frogs, they will have been hibernating on the bottom of the pond. They'll have actually been in the mud. And to breathe, they absorb oxygen through their skins the 3 or 4 months that they're down there. And then when it gets warm enough, like tonight, about 4 or 5 degrees, bop, up they come, start croaking and straight away into breeding, and they won't feed at all during this period. They've only got one thing in mind. The female's covered with lots of little bumps, and the male is very smooth. If he feels the bumpy bit, then he knows he's got the right one. If he gets hold of somebody smooth, then no.
Right.
Time to let go. See, that's a pair in amplexus. That's how it should be. One male to one female. And his job, really, is to kick off any other males that are trying to come in.
Yeah, but they're all sort of milling round, and there seem to be far more male frogs than there are females.
It's true. I think that is a phenomenon. Goodness knows why. I suppose the fact that there are more males means that there's absolutely no doubt that a female's going to find a suitor. What will happen? That he's holding her up under her front legs, and when she's ready to lay the eggs, she'll help by pushing with her own front legs, and the spawn will come out in a clump, and he'll fertilise it. He'll spread the milt over it as it is laid, and then it'll sink to the bottom of the pond, and then it floats back up to the surface with this marvellous protective jelly around the eggs.
Yeah.
And it really is effective. There aren't many birds and animals that can cope with it. And it's certainly not monogamous. Well, it's a free-for-all down there. Look at this, Wendy. Can you see the water thrashing around over here?
Yeah.
There, that's the female. Look, there's more than one male.
Crikey, yeah, she's got a whole crowd round.
3 or 4 at least. Well, just get them away.
She could drown with all that, no?
They often do. With the number that we've got here, 4 or 5, the female could well drown, and so it defeats the object. Quite apart from being not very nice to her. Seething mass, isn't it? We just get a bit more.
It's like a rugby scrum in there, isn't it? Free for all. Then how old are the frogs before they start this cycle all over again and they come back to mate?
About 2 years. When I put spawn in my own pond, which didn't ever have any frogs, it was 2 years before I had any adult frogs come back. I think that the oldest recorded frog in the wild back at the breeding site was about 7 years old.
Simon, this has all been a wonderful experience, absolutely fascinating, but I'm absolutely frozen now. And if we stay here much longer, I don't think I will ever move again.
I expect to live in a world that's free. That's what they told me. I expect to see compassion when I know there is none. But I still expect someone to care about me. I expect you to love me when you say that's what it is. And I bet one day you'll change your mind. Like when I turn on the television and see the killing on the news, I can be sure it's gonna happen every time. I like to think that I'm up to me. strong. Whoa. I like to think that there will be a happy ending. I hate to think I could be. I hate to think I might be wrong. Yeah. Well, I saw an old friend and he was looking way down. He said, hey, can you lend me $25? And I said, hey man, when I'm down, will you remember? Will you do the same for me? He said, I don't know. Guess I expect too much. I like to think that I'm optimistic. I like to think that I'm strong. Whoa. I like to think that there will be a happy ending. I hate to think I could be. No reason why I should be. I hate to think I could be. You know, I just might be wrong.
First, Simon King shares some of his secrets to successful wildlife filming in the company of David Essex.
Just a few decades ago, buzzards like that were quite rare in this country. Myxomatosis hit the rabbit population, and as the rabbit numbers went down, so did the animals that depended on them for food. Then, as rabbits made a comeback, buzzards gradually began to increase. Now, there's a pair breeding in the wood on the horizon. There's another breeding pair in this copse below me, and just a few weeks ago, I filmed a pair just over here when their chicks were just over a week old.
It's the female buzzard who feeds the chicks, though the male does a lot or most of the hunting, often carrying prey a mile or more to the nest. I found this nest whilst the female was still sitting on eggs, but I didn't start work on filming until after they'd hatched. Even though buzzards are quite common, they're usually nervous birds. They have fantastic eyesight, and unless you're very careful, they'll spot your movements, even if you're in a hide some distance away. To get shots like this, a lot of time and planning is involved, always watching the birds carefully and abandoning the project if they show signs of anxiety. If everything is going well, the buzzards will behave completely naturally, despite the fact that a new metal tree with a large box-like nest has been built within 30 feet of their own. It's this sort of background work that most people tend not to think about when they're watching natural history films.
Ray Baines works as a driver for the Transport and General Workers Union, but spends much of his off-duty time trying to photograph birds and animals, without, he admits, a great deal of success. Writing from his home in Llandudno, Wales, he wonders why buzzards always avoid him while seeming to jump onto every convenient branch for Simon's camera.
The metal tree I talked about, a scaffolding tower, can only be built a bit at a time because the adult buzzards leave the nest when we approach, and we mustn't allow the small chicks to be left alone for too long or they'll get chills. Day by day, it begins to take shape. But when 15 minutes is up, everybody has to down tools. Even though the tower can be built quite quickly, we have to make sure we don't go too far in any one session, allowing the adult buzzards to get used to every stage of the building slowly. The bright silver of the tower doesn't seem to disturb the birds. It's the fact that it's there at all that they have to adjust to. Colour is irrelevant.
Well, there it is.
Over there?
Yeah, that's what we're going to spend the rest of the day up. You're not scared of heights?
I'll tell you when I'm up there.
After a week and a half of work, Ray had joined me for the first day's filming from the hide. The chicks were older now, and their parents were leaving them for 4 or 5 hours between feeds. Whilst we were getting all the camera gear set up inside, a friend of mine waited below. His job was to walk away, giving the birds the impression everyone had left. Buzzards aren't that good at counting. Ray's ambition was to see not just the chicks, but to get a really good, close view of an adult buzzard. This could mean a long wait.
Usually when I'm working a buzzard nest, I expect to stay in the hide about 12 hours. So I hope you're ready for that. I thought I'd save it until we were up here to tell you that. You've got no choice now.
Yeah. How old would you say these are?
Well, can you see they look greyish? And if you look at the back of the heads, there's a pale patch. Yeah. Well, that pale down, that pale patch, is the first down. Just swallowed one, I think. There's all, but what the colour that they are now, that greyish colour, is the second down. So I would think they're between, well, 12 and 14 days, that sort of age. Yeah. When they hatch, they're covered in that very white, fluffy down. But the hardest part of the body to preen is the back of the head, and that's why you've got the patch that's still left.
And it's as simple as that?
It's as simple as that.
That's one leg gone to sleep.
Oh, yeah, it's when peace comes when you've lost the feeling in the bottom half of your body, and then you can relax. That's about hour 6. Even though that's the eldest chick, it's still not strong enough to tear its own prey. And this is why it's essential that the female survives. Because even at this stage, if the male, as happens, supplies prey, he still won't feed the chicks. He won't tear it up, and he will not feed it to them. So if the female were to be shot or run over or poisoned or whatever, at this stage the chicks would certainly be doomed. Must be heartbreaking to watch when you see the male bring rabbit after rabbit and the chicks just slowly dying in front of him. Listen, I just heard the adult. Try not to move, she may be looking.
Looks like they know that she's there.
Yeah.
Is she behind them, do you think?
Yeah, well, they tend to perk up as they see the adult coming in. Keep your eye on them. That calling is hunger calling. And it's a stimulus to the adult if she's around. Oh, look, don't breathe, don't breathe. Don't breathe. Did you get that?
Did she breathe anything?
Yeah, she's brought prey in. The little one's got it, look. Oh, it's being attacked. Yeah, it's being attacked. Oh, look at the young one. Look at the young one that's being attacked. Dear me.
Did they survive?
Oh, so often they die. Often the youngest is killed. Oh, it's going to get chucked out of the nest if he's not careful.
Has he got the prey?
Oh, yeah, he's got hold of it. Oh, dear me, he's getting... Oh, look, the adult. Look, rabbit. Don't breathe, don't breathe. She's bringing out half a rabbit. Can you see it? Look at that. She's... Oh, marvellous. Don't pan up, even though she's just hopped up. Whatever you do, don't move, because any movement at this stage, she'll pick it up. That stopped the argument, anyway. How about that, then?
Well, wait to suffer for your dinner.
What a beautiful bird, though, eh?
That's fantastic. I mean, that's wild, isn't it? Yeah.
As the afternoon went on, rain settled in from the west, and even though Ray had some good views of the buzzard feeding her chicks, the light was useless for filming.
On a late summer outing with her 3 children, Tracy Wiseman from Lancing in Sussex was chased by a very large dragonfly. Fearful for her children's safety, she fled to the car. Since then, she's often thought about the event, and now she wonders if Simon could get her close enough to a dragonfly to put her and daughter Laura's mind at rest.
Got one. There you go.
Oh, yes.
Don't worry, it won't hurt you. I think you wrote in your letter that you were scared it might sting, weren't you?
Yes.
No. That bit at the end looks like a sting, but that's just the business of breeding.
And they don't sting at all?
No, don't hurt you at all. In fact, they're just plain old benign, beautiful insects, even though they're so big. This one, I'm not sure... Can you have a look in the book? I'm not sure what species it is. It looks to me like it's just emerged from the nymph, and so its colours aren't completely developed, so it's quite hard to tell. Let's have a look. I can't work without this book. It's even though I love dragonflies, and they're very beautiful creatures, I can never remember all the species. There's something like 40, so I have to take this guide with me. It's a very good guide for identification. This one here, that's the one that's common. No, you see that triangle on the back? That, it looks like it's absent. Let's go, this one here. Junkia, that's what it is. Common hawker, which actually isn't very common here, so that's a nice one to find. Is that the size of the one that you saw chasing you?
Well, actually, it was a bit thicker, I think.
Yes.
Perhaps a little bit longer.
That was probably the emperor. That's a very big
And it was
dragonfly.
green and blue.
Yeah, emperor dragonfly. They are beautiful. Look at the wings.
Where are his eyes?
Can you see this? Are you scared of it? Don't worry, it won't hurt you.
It won't hurt you.
You see the eyes?
No, I can't.
That's the whole of the head, virtually.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, those 2 great lumps are the eyeballs, and they're compound eyes. If you look... Yeah, it's hard to see. If you look very close, I'll try not to let it fly on your nose, but it won't hurt you if it does. Can you see it's made up of tiny little bits? Each tiny fragment is like a single eye, and it goes to make up the picture of its world.
Oh. So like a fly, then?
That's it. Same with most of the insects.
He's very docile as well.
He's a bit dopey. Today is quite cool, which is good for showing them.
Handling them.
That's right. But in the same count, this one I think is a freshly emerged one. And then the muscles aren't really warm enough or developed enough for good, strong flight. And you can see his colours. He's quite colourful. You can see the blue coming through down the body. I think this is a male. But after a couple of meals, after he's eaten a few bugs, he'll be a very, very vivid blue, and this yellow will show up quite well. So he's got a bit to go before he's fully adult.
And how long will he live for? Because they don't live very long, do they?
Lots of people think they live for just a day, but this is the most vulnerable time. He might only live a few hours if a bird picks him off. But after that, he could live a month, maybe longer, if the weather's good. This critter is only in its most, well, to our eyes, the most beautiful stage for perhaps a month at the most, maybe a little longer, and it's spent 2 years down underwater as a grotesque nymph. I saw a couple of nymph cases, so I'll go and get one, show you what it came out of. Here you go, Tracy, I found one of the nymphs. You are, that's what, it's not actually alive, this is just a shell. They start as an egg, that will hatch into a little baby nymph, and then over the course, with this species, I think it's 2 or 3 years, underwater, feeding on underwater things like tadpoles and little freshwater shrimps. And then eventually, on a warm day, hopefully, they climb a stem, I think this was hatched a few days ago, climb a stem out of the water and split down the back and emerge. And you see these little white bits? Yeah. Well, first of all, I used to think those were bits pulled out by the legs like socks, but apparently they're little breathing tubes so that it can maintain its contact with air whilst it's hatching, so it doesn't suffocate, basically. Good. And then it breaks away from those and it's a free living form.
The emergence of a dragonfly from its larval skin is a breathtaking phenomenon. Every time I see it, it's a bit like witnessing a birth. The whole process can last 20 minutes or several hours, depending on the weather and, I imagine, the general condition of the dragonfly. The effort needed to complete the emergence appears to be considerable on behalf of the adult dragonfly. I often wonder at which point the nymph ceases to exist and the dragonfly takes on its new existence. It has a rest once its upper body is free. Having flipped up to grab onto its old skin, it hauls its tail from the case. A while longer, allowing its wings to dry and expand, and the dragonfly is ready to make its maiden flight.
David Essex, who first hit the pop charts in 1973. Since then, he's combined 2 highly successful careers, music and acting. He starred on film in That'll Be the Day, Stardust and Silver Dream Machine, and on stage in Godspell, Evita and Mutiny. But he promised there would be no mutiny aboard the boat when he joined Simon to take a close look at some seals in the wilds of Scotland.
We flew up to the Outer Hebrides off the west coast of Scotland and arrived just after daybreak.
This area is clear to land, runway 25, surface wind 1708 knots.
David was in the middle of a whistle-stop tour of the British Isles in October and only had 1 day in his busy schedule when he could join me.
In this area left at the end onto the apron park in the northeast corner.
Sure.
We'd flown through some bad and bumpy weather on the way up, but by the time we landed, the rain had stopped. This far north, the days are very short in late October.
Okay. One head.
We only had 7 hours to get from the plane to the boat, from the boat to the breeding grounds on the Monarch Islands, film the seals and get back again, all before nightfall.
Have you ever worn one of these? One of these
I like
hats?
that.
I've never worn
That's
one
almost
of these.
as good as my hat. I like it.
No, this is better than your hat.
We were told there were going to be gale force winds, that the rain was going to be lashing down, that the seas were going to be enormous. And on top of that, we had to crawl on our bellies through sand and salt water, and we had to wear rubber waterproof suits so we couldn't pin a microphone on. So we came up with these. This is a throat microphone that records your voice as it passes through your neck. It sounds like this.
The rain in the Outer Hebrides falls mainly on the plains.
Sounds pretty weird. In case you can't understand what we're saying when we're on the beach with the seals, we've provided a few subtitles. I felt a bit of a twit wearing all the survival gear, with the day turning into a calm, sunny afternoon. Still, we had to be prepared, and the army, who were our guides, had warned us that up here it could change from calm to severe storm in no time at all. We were going to try and land in a quiet bay where there were very few seals, and even though time was short, once on the island there was no way we could rush things. If we or any of the crew caused the seals to panic, it could have been disastrous for the young pups. Their mothers aren't too good at finding their offspring again, and if we scared the adults from the beach, many young could have been deserted. It was essential that we kept our scent blowing away from the breeding beaches and that none of us broke the skyline.
It must be about 50 pups there. The bull fish, the bull like the pups there. The Roman. Yeah. It's roaming about. That is incredible. That quite strong sign. That moaning. Yeah. You can imagine some sailors of the olden days thinking there's some monster out on the beach. Definitely. I'm going to get the camera. Yeah. Got some pictures. I hope they'll get the ceiling breathing. I'm going now, you can use the camera. How'd you turn it on? Is it a flash? It's dramatic. Terrific sight. Incredible. Getting you down to the sea then. Maybe for a bit of sleep. That great big bull. Let me get that leopard skin on. I can't get it from him. I have to come around a bit. Maybe we should come this side and get it from here. These baby seals grow so quickly that they're able to face up to, and they're weaned in their cease at about 3 weeks, 21 days, and they're weaned. That's amazing, I think. They put on something like, I think it's about 2 kilos, just about 2 kilos every day. So that makes pretty good stuff. Salmon? Yeah, just trained it on that ball. Got a bit closer. Oh yeah, great faces. Beautiful. You know, I'm seeing most of the background at the moment. Got great backside. Great backside. And the right profile, obviously his best side. It'd be lovely to get closer, wouldn't it? In a minute, when I've just done a couple more shots, we'll try and keep down. So if they show any signs of anxiety... Yeah, we don't want to upset them, obviously. Okay. The pups are so beautiful, aren't they? That big black eye. See, they're not only giving birth at this time, they're also mating again. Which sounds incredible, because you think, how can it last that long, you know, the gestation? Yeah. But, they've got delayed implantation. The egg doesn't actually implant for about just over 100 days. So even though it's fertilised, it sort of hangs around.
strange, really. You get a period of inactivity.
And then all suddenly
and then all of a sudden, everything happens.
Yeah, they get angry. They just try going on down on the beach. I think that bull is getting amorous and it's like down.
You can't show that to the viewers.
Depends how amorous he gets.
What time is it on at night? No, that can't be easy.
Look at how he's pulling on the strap of the neck.
It's love. Who's got people doing it in love?
Well, they waited all year for this, David.
Yeah, you can understand the passion, the intensity, can't you?
Oh, that's nice. Look at this cow with a pup right beside her head.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, lovely. Look at that. That was actually quite a big pup. It's losing its white fur. Just to look like snow along its back.
And you can actually see that they, in their coat colours, that they seem to be related. I mean, that must be mum, mustn't it?
Yeah.
There's a similarity there.
We haven't got very long. If you want to try and go down amongst them, I think we should do it now.
Let's try and...
If it's okay to go...
If we get it, yeah.
Just stop.
Yeah.
I'll go first.
You go first. If I see you stop, then I'll stop. I have lens.
We'll travel. This is the most dangerous point. If we break the skyline, so just stay nice and low. Very painful.
It's going to roll all the way down here. Look.
That is serious business, that.
It came from nowhere all of a sudden. I don't know why.
He's given up. Oh, that height caused the wound. He's got a gaping cut on his neck. Yeah.
My favourite is this pup down here, the one, the yawner, yeah. The yawner and the roller is performer, this one.
Even though they're enormous, bulky animals, some of the males weigh more than 350 kilos. That's 55 stone. They are, I think, quite beautiful. There are about 200,000 grey seals in the world at the moment, and about half of these breed around the coast of Britain. And that sounds like a lot of seals, but they're elusive animals that only gather in remote, wild places like this. David and I are now two of those very privileged few who've seen them in large numbers and in such a wonderful setting. We would have liked to have stayed on, but the men from the Royal Corps of Transport insisted that we leave in time to get back to base before dark. It was just as well they did. Another few hours on the island, and we'd have been stranded there by an enormous storm.
Lisa Goddard joins Simon King for the last in the series, hoping to enjoy the oyster catchers as they fly into a Cornish estuary to feed. King and Company at the same time next Wednesday.
In the new edition of the BBC Wildlife magazine, Paul Sterry is up the Amazon with a bizarre community of Blackwater River inhabitants who seem to prefer life out of the water. Beetle fanatic Trevor Forsyth describes some fascinating facts about the world's most successful group of animals, the predator of the leaf litter, the ground beetle. Keep a keen eye on the natural world with the new edition of the BBC Wildlife magazine.
On BBC Two in a moment, Time Watch discusses the long-awaited carbon dating tests on the Shroud of Turin, believed by millions to be the burial cloth of Jesus. We on One send Paul Heine in at the deep end.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and mix through 1, 0.
This is the side of the cameras that I know most about, but I've only got to take a few steps behind them and I'm into a very different world. But it's a world I've got to master because I'm hoping to join the ranks of some of the world's top directors and direct for a major rock star